If thoughts about the future take away your peace, if you find it difficult to fall asleep at night because you are stricken with repetitive thoughts and they don't let you fall asleep and stay calm, if during the day, every time you worry in advance about what will happen, the level of stress and tension that occurs in you physically manifests itself with palpitations, sweats, rapid breaths, if you physically feel a lump in the chest, a lump in the throat, or a lump in the pit of your stomach, if you feel you don't know what, but there is no logical explanation, but you sense that something bad is going to happen, if repetitive behaviors that you can't control appear out of nowhere, and many of them happen involuntarily, like pulling your hair, biting your nails, biting the corners of your fingers, pinching yourself frequently, and besides all of this, if you also resort to food when your emotion levels are very altered, it is likely that, like 8 out of 10 people, you are suffering from anxiety. I've been asked a lot to talk about this topic, and it's something I owe to all of you. I'm Maria Elena Vadillo. It is a pleasure to greet you, and if this is the first time you watch one of my videos, let me introduce myself. I'm a psychologist by profession, passionate about spirituality and personal growth, and I dedicate myself to accompany people to create the life of plenitude and welfare they deserve. Before we dive into the depths of this topic, I want to invite you to please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button so that you don't miss any of the content that I prepare for you. Remember, we are talking about couple relationships, abundance and prosperity, spirituality, and personal growth. And this is a wonderful community of thousands of souls who accompany each other around the world and grow together. So without further ado, I welcome you to this video and let's go with today's topic. A lot has been said about anxiety, and I don't want to be repetitive. Surely, if you are suffering from anxiety, you have already consulted on the internet, and you already know that anxiety occurs because there is an anticipation of a future event and because your brain is automatically anticipating the worst case scenario. What I want you to understand today is that we basically have two types of anxiety. Conscious anxiety, where you are the conscious door that allows the entrance of voluntary or involuntary negative thoughts. But there's another type of anxiety, the anxiety that occurs due to the discomfort that is in the subconscious, that you probably haven't processed, and that is with you in your daily life through behaviors that you simply cannot control. I'm going to divide it into two big groups, okay? People who already recognize themselves as anxious because they know that it is difficult for them to think about the future, that they are full of fear, and that they always worry about the possibility that any alternative or choice will turn out to be disastrous. Let's say that's the group 1. I label myself, I identify myself as an anxious person, and I know that this anxiety has physical manifestations in my body, that I cannot control my thoughts, and therefore I cannot control my emotions. And for this reason, I already know that, for example, exposing myself to speaking in public, remembering that I have to present that report, or thinking that my partner can leave me are triggers that, to me, someone who has the characteristics of an anxious person, lead me to the limit. Group number 1. Group number 2. People who don't identify themselves as anxious, who don't believe they're having recurring or negative thoughts about the future, but who simply, in their behavior, they have attitudes or actions that are beyond their control. And when least expected, there are no nails because they have already eaten all of them. They start to eat a bag of Doritos, and when they realize it is no longer one bag but two or three or four, and they begin to compulsively repeat behaviors that are closely associated with anxiety, but that they cannot identify as behaviors associated with an unsolved internal problem. They simply don't know why. I don't have anything that is consciously going through my head, Maria. That's what my patients tell me. But I'm not able to control the involuntary movements in my legs. I'm not able to stop pinching myself. I'm not able to stop pulling my hair. I just cannot control it. Although consciously I cannot identify that certain kinds of behavior or thoughts pass through my head on a recurring basis. With this, we have clearly identified two broad categories of the types of anxiety that we can experience. I will not go into detail about it, but I do want you to consider the following. Anxiety arises from the following. Emotion is energy in motion, and what is happening when we are experiencing symptoms of anxiety is that there are emotions within us that are not being processed. Your mind, consciously or unconsciously, made your body prepare for a reaction that may be running away, attacking, or hiding. And this arises because you are identifying threats in the environment. Let me show you what I'm telling you now with an example. If you are considering that your partner may leave you, this may pose a threat for your emotional well being. And then your mind prepares for that threat, which is the pain of losing someone. And what does it do? Biologically, it fills you with a series of neurochemical and hormonal substances that prepare you to face a negative event that is about to come. Why? Because for your mind, the possibility that the person you want will leave you already represents a trigger for a conjunctural event for which you have to be prepared. However, that wait is probably prolonged because finally the fear of breaking up only exists in your head and the breakup never ends up materializing. However, the amount of biologically neurochemical energy produced within you to cope with the event of the rupture is there. And energy, as you well know, is not destroyed nor disappears. Therefore, that energy needs to find a way to vent. It needs to find an escape route. And what better alternative to release that energy that was already contained in you than an anxious behavior, such as compulsive eating, nail biting, or smoking? Other threats can be, for example, thinking that you are not good enough and that unleashes an anxious behavior, or a manifestation of anxiety in you when your boss says, you know what, next week you will be responsible for presenting the new project to the entire board of directors or to the entire company. If you realize the action of exposing yourself to the judgment or criticism of a representative group of people added to the concept you have built about yourself based on your story are the perfect sum for an anxious trigger. So, what happens is that in advance you start. Remember that I just explained number two. Now we go with group number one. Group number one is when I already know that I'm anxious and when I already know that negative thoughts appear in me and physically manifest as symptoms of anxiety. So, in this case, in the case of a presentation to a group in a work environment, the sum of your personal history and your self concept, plus the trigger that you can be judged and criticized, automatically makes your mind immediately start producing the nefarious thoughts in advance. We call it self fulfilling prophecy. It will go wrong for me. I will make a mistake. I won't do it. And that energy that you are producing in your body will need to be released because you are not going to wait a week for the event to happen. In your mind, you are self affirming that what is going to happen is going to be awful and that your performance is not going to be appropriate. Therefore, since your mind doesn't distinguish between reality and fiction, what is happening is that the discharge of neurotransmitters and stress hormones, such as cortisol, will need to lead you to some physical symptom that allows that flow to vent and decant. Thus, palpitations, rapid breathing, eating disorders, and even sleep disorders will appear. Very well. So let's say that in some way, anxiety is the result of an energetic accumulation present in your body, consciously or unconsciously, that needs to be released, that needs to be vented. Nature doesn't make mistakes. Each of the emotions present in us has a specific function. Joy, of course, helps us enjoy and helps us maintain a positive attitude. Surprise helps us to anticipate events and to react immediately. Pain and sadness help us create bonds and ties and also value full and happy moments. But anxiety, like the previous ones, also has a positive characteristic and it is also necessary. Anxiety is part of that great emotion that we call fear, and it has the purpose of preparing us, taking care of ourselves, anticipating and helping us to overcome the different circumstances of life in an adequate way. Anxiety can be healthy, and remember, we all have experienced it to some extent. And it is healthy when, although being anxiety, it is experienced as a genuine emotion. When, for example, you're about to get married or you're about to meet the person you like, and you are anxious, and anxious, we can see it as wow, my body is preparing itself energetically with a lot of joy and a lot of emotion to live a wonderful moment. It is a preparation, an anticipation that helps you face a stressful situation in an adequate, harmonious, and adaptive way. The problem is when that anxiety goes from a genuine emotion to a sincere discomfort. And one of the characteristics of people who suffer from generalized anxiety, chronic anxiety, or severe anxiety is that they really experience physical symptoms of deep discomfort and are very misunderstood. People often tell someone who suffers from anxiety, but calm down, nothing is happening. But why are you acting like that? What happens to you? And the thing is that only the one who has experienced extreme anxiety knows what it feels like to physically live being scared because something could happen to you. Physically experiencing the feeling that you are facing a real threat, that you have no idea what it is, but you feel that you are in danger. Physically experiencing that something bad is going to happen, and it doesn't allow you to concentrate. It doesn't allow you to think positively. It doesn't allow you to find alternative solutions. It blocks your mind, and over time, it becomes absolutely exhausting. Remember what I was explaining to you a few minutes ago. Your body is in survival mode all the time and is creating energy and preparing to be attacked, and at the same time venting it through a physical reaction, creating and letting go, creating and letting go. And in this process, in this circle that doesn't end, the person no longer has time to recharge. They don't have time to create. They don't have time to visualize a better tomorrow because all the time they're thinking that the worst case scenario is going to materialize in their lives. So, three keys that I want to share with you if you are experiencing anxiety or if you are exposed to a specific situation that is triggering an anxious behavior in you. Like marriage, a job change, moving out of the city, a big academic test, a conjunctural situation with your partner. All these triggers can lead you to an anxiety process, and I'm going to suggest three things that are super easy, simple, and very friendly for everyday application. The first of them is to keep in mind that yes, physically you are experiencing discomfort, and there's nothing you can do with it beyond accepting it. One of the things that increases our anxiety levels the most is that when I'm having, for example, a panic attack, when I feel that I'm hyperventilating, that my heart is going to explode, that my hands are shaking, I refuse the emotion because the emotion is annoying. So I begin to have an internal battle regarding the symptom that I'm experiencing. It's as if you were going through a migraine, and additionally, you were saying, I reject this migraine. I hate this migraine. I detest it. I cannot bear it. I want you to see what is happening. Physically, you are experiencing something, and emotionally, you are struggling against it. Therefore, what you are doing is multiplying your discomfort by two. Key number one: yes, it is a symptom, it is annoying, but the more you battle against it, the more power you give to it. The more you resist, the more you aggravate the situation. Recognizing that it is hurting, that it is bothering you, and that it is uncomfortable is going to be much more kind with yourself, because instead of investing energy in resisting it, you are going to invest energy in letting the symptom pass. And I want you to follow me with this example. Imagine that you just hit your little toe right now. As much as you resist the pain, and as much as you argue and fight with what happened, you know that the pain has a transition stage. You know that you will need time for the pain to simply decrease little by little. Correct? While you fight with the table, you just hit your little toe. The only thing you are doing is aggravating your discomfort. But if you take a deep breath and you know that yes, it's a reality, it's hurting, yes, it's real, it's uncomfortable, but also if instead of fighting against it, you stop and accept consciously and recognize that it's uncomfortable, but that it has a peak and then it will descend, you will understand that it is just a matter of time for that very annoying symptom, I know, to pass and go away. Why? Because remember what I told you, you have an accumulation of energy, and that energy needs to be released. It needs to be vented. The more annoying the symptom is, the more you are reaching the peak of expression of that repressed energy, and the easier it will be for you to vent it through the symptom. It will be faster for the symptom to disappear. So, key number one, do not resist the symptom. I know it is uncomfortable, but it is better that you accept it. Key number two, I want you to keep in mind that you are not in a real danger. What do I want to tell you with this? That if you really see the fact that your partner leaves you, that your presentation at work goes bad, that you're gaining weight instead of losing it, that you have pending accounts to pay, those are uncomfortable situations that may have consequences, but you are already experiencing the greatest consequence of those possible alternatives or possible results, because you are making the result real. Where? In your mind. So, I want you to realize this. Nothing that happens outside is going to be more forceful and stronger and more painful than what you are already doing inside yourself. And for that, it is enough for you to think about the worst situation you have ever experienced throughout your life. Today, when you look at that situation and you say, wow, the time that person I love the most broke up with me, the time I was fired, when I had a traffic accident and I thought I wasn't going to be able to leave the hospital. When you remember all those situations and think, wow, well, it was very painful, it was uncomfortable, but I managed to overcome it. And after all, it wasn't that serious, it wasn't that bad. But if instead of this you start to think, what would happen if I don't get a job? You realize that everything you imagine, everything you think that will happen to you, and how bad you will feel it in your mind, all that is much more serious than when that event actually happens or when it is completed. What I want to tell you is the following. It is like when you have to travel. You are afraid of planes, you hate getting on a plane, and you know that in a month you have to take a flight because there's not an alternative. You definitely have to take that trip. 4 weeks to go, and during those 4 weeks, every day, in the morning, afternoon, and at night, all you do is think. The time to travel is coming, the time to travel is coming. It'll be horrible if that plane crashes. I'm going to get sick. You get sick, you don't eat, and don't sleep well. You somatize, you get anxious. The closer the day of the trip, the more symptoms you experience because you are producing more energy and you are charging yourself emotionally. So you need to vent that energy. But in the end, I want you to think about this. That flight lasts 2 hours or maybe 3 or 4 hours, and now, in addition to the real discomfort that you could have experienced during those 4 hours of flight, the anguish is multiplied by the 4 weeks in which you were anticipating what was going to manifest once you traveled. Are you following me with the example I'm creating for you? So, it is true that there's a danger, that there's a threat, or that there's a risk. But what is going to happen on the real plane is never going to be more serious and more forceful than the emotional damage you are already doing to yourself when you anticipate that event consciously or unconsciously. The third key I want to share with you is not avoiding things. One of the biggest mistakes that people who suffer from anxiety make is to avoid that condition that triggers anxiety in them. For example, if thinking that I have to speak in public is what makes them anxious, what these type of people do is to avoid by all means that event. If I think that going out to crowded spaces, using the public transport, or going out every night is what unleashes my anxiety, using the elevator is what unleashes my anxiety, many people trying to avoid the uncomfortable symptom, what they do is to avoid taking the elevator, they avoid taking the train, they avoid exposing themselves to the crowd. And what they don't see is that the more you avoid it, the more power you are given to a fear that exists only in your mind. Because remember this, I know it is uncomfortable and I emphasize that, but if you see it in an objective manner, you are not exposed to real danger. Remember, anxiety is part of the category of primary emotions, one of the 5 primary emotions that we call fear. Anxiety falls into that category, and fear has a very important biological and adaptive function to protect you from dangers and threats and ensuring your survival. But what real danger are you exposed to when you speak in public? Is your life in danger when you speak in public? What real danger are you exposed to when using an elevator or getting on the train? Exactly the same danger as any other human being, because it is part of the human condition that at any moment you can have an accident, that your life may end, or that something negative can simply happen because it is part of this experience that we call life. And you experience it, and us, 8 billion inhabitants of the planet experience it. So don't avoid those situations that are causing you anxiety, because you are giving them much more power. Yes, it'll make you uncomfortable, a symptom will appear. Yes, you can experience something very uncomfortable, including a panic attack, but remember all the time that you are not exposed to real danger, and that the more you avoid this type of event, the more you are encouraging the growth of anxiety in yourself. Finally, about anxiolytics. Unfortunately, anxiolytics are one of the most consumed drugs worldwide. And this occurs because many people want to alleviate the symptom and not to cure the cause. Okay? So, I don't recommend anxiolytics, but I understand that in some cases it must be necessary in the early stages in which anxiety is being dealt with, or it must be necessarily prescribed by a doctor when the anxiety level is so high that you cannot continue with your life anymore. When it is already affecting your daily life, when it is making it impossible for you to continue with your usual life dynamics. Now, I'm very honest with this. Many people and also many doctors simply resort to prescribing anxiolytics, or many people self-prescribe anxiolytics, simply trying to avoid further discomfort. But without being conscious enough to know that today they're feeling discomfort, but that they can tolerate it. I leave the example of anxiety aside and I give you the example of having migraine. It is as if you had a migraine that is impossible to tolerate, that doesn't allow you to open your eyes, it doesn't allow you to get out of bed, it doesn't allow you to work, it is so severe and so strong that you even vomit, and it doesn't allow you to be a functional person. In these cases, would it be worth taking a migraine meditation? Definitely yes. But if you have a slight discomfort, a slight headache, yes, it is uncomfortable, yes, it can unsettle you, it can alter your state of mind, but actually, being very honest, you are able to tolerate it, you are able to handle it. Would it be worthwhile to start taking the medication just to alleviate that discomfort that you know that you are able to control and tolerate by your own means? I want you to realize that if the anxiety level that you have is bearable, it is manageable, and you can start to control it through psychotherapy, therapeutic support, or the techniques that I'm sharing with you now. The question that I'm posing and I want to highlight is it worth it to start now bombarding your body with anxiolytics and to start depending on an external factor to get momentary wellness? When you're not attacking the real cause of your anxiety, which is your personal history, your scheme of thoughts, your mental wiring, the ones that lead you to see life in a negative way automatically, is it worth it to start right away to dope with anxiolytics? Or is it worth it to take yourself to the emotional and spiritual gym and begin to find the tools by yourself to make that headache lose more and more power, disappear, and like any other human being, understand that everyone, absolutely everyone, is exposed at any time in our lives to have a headache again. At any time in your life, anxiety can be triggered again, like in a conjunctural event, in a critical situation, or because of a high stress trigger, but it'll not be impossible nor incapacitating. And like any human being, within you, you'll have the ability to tolerate and handle it. If this video was helpful for you, I hope you'll leave your comments. I will love to read them. Please like my video, and with this approval, I will know that the content I'm creating for you with so much love is being appreciated. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram. On Instagram, you will not find photos of my personal life. In addition to that, because I also share them, each publication has complementary material. You will find tips, recommendations, keys, and reflections that will help you create the version of yourself that you dream of and that you deserve, and to manifest the life of your dreams. Please start following me on Instagram, and you can also find me on Facebook. Without further ado, I send you a kiss, all my love, and remember that I will be happy to read your comments. See you in the next video.